Hey, let's take a trip over to your neck of the woods, Katy. We've got a caller, Dani, who I think is calling in to maybe just talk a little bit of shit about America, and that's okay. That's
Let's
okay.
go.
All right, Dani, how are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, good to meet Katy and Kenneth today.
Hello. What can we help you with this week?
Oh, I'm just thinking about. I know you're from the UK, same as I am, and I'm a trans person. Even though my voice doesn't really portray that, but do you feel that it's easier to be a trans person in the UK rather than the USA?
That is a difficult question. I guess because I've never actually been to the USA, so it's hard to say other than from talking. I talk to trans people from all around the world all the time, and some of my best friends are American trans people. I do get a good understanding of what it's like on the ground. I think that one thing to bear in mind whenever you're hearing about um, the horrible attacks on the LGBT community from like law and the media at the moment, which is relentless and is constantly happening all the time. Um, as we've kind of been talking about as the theme of the show almost so far, is that most people aren't like that. Most people don't support these things, taking away LGBT people's rights. Most people aren't bigoted. And you can sense that when you're out and about, just on the street, in the pub, at work, people generally treat you well. And that's definitely true of my experience in the UK, of almost everywhere I've been in the UK. And from talking to American trans people, it seems that's the case in a lot of places. And I think that it does vary. I live in a city, and generally cities are more accepting for LGBT people, and that's probably true the world over. But yeah, one thing that's interesting to always think about, like from a British perspective, when talking about the USA, is, I mean, US is not really like a country. It's like 50 countries because it's just so big. It's like comparing it to the whole of Europe. And, you could say, oh, which is better to live in, Europe or the USA? Um, and that would depend. Something like Hungary is one of the worst places to live for trans people, almost in the world. It's definitely in the bottom half. It's the worst place in Europe. Absolutely terrible, and it's probably worse than anywhere in the USA. But then somewhere like France or Iceland are very good for trans people, and it's the same in the USA. There are many states where they have much better laws than the UK, and they probably have a higher percentage support, and they have less media aggression against trans people. And then there are some states which that's not the case at all. And it's been interesting looking at the laws of the different states in the USA to see how different they are. In some places, if you want to update your birth certificate, passport, driving license, all that kind of stuff, you can just do it. Like almost in an afternoon, you can just fill out a form and it's just done. But then in other places, like Tennessee, for example, you just can't change it at all. So I don't know. I kind of imagine the UK as like maybe in the middle. It would have been in the upper sort of quarter, I guess, at one point, but now it's probably moved down to about halfway on the scale of where to live compared to the US states, if that makes sense. So if we were like the 51st state, which we depressingly kind of are in some ways, we'd kind of be in the middle. But yeah, that's kind of my ignorant, never been to America view. I don't know if you could comment on this, Kenneth, as someone who isn't a trans person.
Well,
But you have lived on both sides of the Atlantic. So
I've lived
perhaps
all over the United States, and I live smack dab in the middle of it now. So yeah, I would say that even within certain states, I mean, like I lived for some years in Illinois, and the experience of a trans person living in Chicago is going to be very different from if they were to hop in their car and drive south for a couple hours. I mean, it's not as simple as urban versus rural by any means,
Yeah.
but it definitely, I mean, you can sort of look at like political heat maps of the United States and see where a person where a trans person is going to be more or less welcomed, where and especially sort of legislatively, where you've got, it runs the gamut from some places trying really hard to do the right thing and other places that are openly hostile towards trans people. So yeah, there's I feel super bad for, like, you know, I mean, if I was to make up like a hypothetical state, like, you know, like Georgia or like Alabama, some, you know, random, you know, you know, if you're like a trans teenager living, you know, in certain parts of the country, things are going to be really difficult for you. And there's no sort of nice or easy way to say it. It just is. So I think that one of the reasons why, you know, people who do work like what Katy does, where there's an international reach of just sort of, you know, normalizing just being who you are and pushing back against bigotry. It's great because, I mean, for myriad reasons, but I think about, you know, some poor, you know, helpless teenager in some place where everywhere they look, people are going to be openly hostile toward them. And then they can look at someone like Katy and go, okay, it's okay for me to be who I am. I think that's powerful. So, yeah.
You're making me blush.
Well, it's true.
It does make a big difference having the internet and having, you know, media and seeing trans people just existing. Certainly for me. I don't know if you felt that too, Dani.
Well, before all this, I had no idea, and then the internet came along, and, you know, late 90s, I got a PC, got on the internet, and that's when I found out about trans people and realised what I am. So,
Yeah,
that was a good thing.
I mean, I didn't know about it. Well, you know, I experienced being trans as a kid, but I didn't know what it was because it was illegal to teach about being trans people in the UK when I was growing up. And so I didn't really realize that trans people were just normal and that was what I was, you know, till I discovered trans people on YouTube. And that's depressing, but it's,
you know,
it's, sorry?
That's where I was. I feel I'm a little bit older than you, I think. But, thank you for your comments, Kenneth. One of my favourite hosts on here and stuff.
Thanks.
And nice to hear what Katy has to say. And I didn't really have much to say, but I want to call in, so there we are.
Yeah, I would just say if you're
appreciate
planning an American vacation, maybe just don't go to the southern, like they're you know, stick to the coasts. Maybe, I don't know.
This is a problem with the ACA because like half of my American friends are in Texas, and they're like, "Oh, you should just come to Texas right now. It's amazing." And then I talk to my trans friends, and they're like, Texas is like the worst place." And then
Texas is like 5 different states in one. It's its own thing. Yeah, but well, Dani, thank you very much for calling in, and you're welcome anytime.